They flattened my family's 80-year-old bridge before sunrise on a Tuesday morning. Bulldozer tracks in the mud, chunks of hand-cut stone tumbling into the creek while they filmed it like a spectacle. They thought it was funny. What they didn't realize was that I owned the only other access road into their fancy gated subdivision. 85 homes, one way in, and I was about to teach them a very expensive lesson about boundaries and consequences. See, Darlene Pritchett, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Meadowbrook Estates, and part-time real estate tyrant, figured she could intimidate the quiet old engineer who lived next door. She was half right. I'm not the kind who argues. I'm the kind who wins. So tell me, what would you do if your neighbors destroyed something your grandfather built by hand? Drop your revenge plan in the comments. And before we go further, where are you watching from? Let's see how far this story travels. My name's Garrett Sullivan, 54, civil engineer, born and raised on 127 acres of wooded hills in western Pennsylvania, 40 minutes from Pittsburgh, but a world away from suburbia. Out here, mornings start with fog over the creek and the smell of diesel from an old Dodge pickup that's outlived most marriages. My grandfather, Pop Sullivan, bought this land in 1938 and built every inch of it himself, including, in 1943, the stone and timber bridge that crossed Blackwater Creek. That bridge wasn't a decoration. It was his pride. Pop dragged limestone out of the creek bed, hewed the beams in his barn, forged the brackets at the blacksmith shop downtown. 8 months of sweat. I caught my first fish under it. Helped my dad replace the planks when I was 16. Every time my tires rolled over that gravel, I could almost hear Pop saying, "Build it right. It'll outlast you." These days I do consulting work, lease a bit of land, and try to live quietly since my wife passed. My daughter's out west. The bridge was the last thing left that still felt like home. Then came the subdivision. A developer bought the old Coalic farm, threw up 85 cookie-cutter houses, and surrounded them with a gate and an HOA that thinks it governs the county. During construction, they paid me for a sewage easement. 12 grand, legal and recorded. Should have been the end of it. Then I met her. Darlene showed up one April afternoon. No call, no appointment, just marched up with a clipboard and a certified letter. It demanded I remove the unsafe bridge within 30 days per HOA environmental guidelines. I told her calmly the HOA had zero authority off their land. Her smile froze. "Mr. Sullivan, we have documentation showing it's abandoned county infrastructure," she chirped. I flipped through their so-called report, 4 pages from a landscaping company. No engineer's stamp, not even a county seal. "Ma'am," I said, "you're out of your depth." She blinked, smiled tighter, and said, "We'll handle this through proper channels." I figured that was the end of it. A week later, I was wrong. At 6:04 a.m., the roar of a diesel engine shook the house. I ran out, boots, boxers, no shirt, and froze. A bulldozer was tearing through Pop's bridge, stone and timber collapsing into the creek while 3 SUVs sat parked on my road. Darlene and her board members stood there recording like tourists at a demolition derby. I shouted, waved my arms. The operator yelled back, "County work order!" I screamed, "It's private property!" But he kept going. By the time the sheriff arrived 40 minutes later, the bridge was rubble. Darlene handed the deputy a neat folder. "Officer, we removed a public hazard," she said sweetly. "We saved the county from liability." The deputy called it a civil issue and drove off. I walked home shaking, covered in limestone dust, and watched the muddy water carry away 80 years of family history. That's when I remembered something very important. Old Mill Road, the other road into their neighborhood, ran across land I still owned. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mitch Kowalski, an old friend from high school who handles land disputes. He flipped through my photos and said, "Garrett, this is textbook property destruction." We filed 2 things that day, an emergency injunction and a lawsuit for $78,000 in damages. The HOA tried to play smart. Their attorneys claimed the bridge had been in public use for so long it belonged to the county, something called adverse possession. Mitch actually laughed. "They clearly don't know what that means. You've got 30 years of maintenance receipts, repairs, taxes, materials. You never abandoned it. We submitted the records. photos of my private property signs, and the county assessor's documents listing the bridge as part of my parcel. The judge tossed their counterclaim in 3 weeks flat, but Darlene didn't quit. Her HOA hired a big Pittsburgh firm, the kind that charges $250 an hour to read an email, and filed a motion saying my lawsuit was frivolous harassment. Then came the so-called settlement offer. I dropped my case, they dropped theirs, and they'll donate $5,000 to a veterans charity in my grandfather's name. Mitch slid the letter across the table at the diner. "It's a PR move," he said. "They'll tell the judge they tried to be reasonable." I stared at that number. $5,000 for what Pop built with his bare hands? I pushed it back. Tell them no. That's when Darlene went for the smear campaign. 2 days later, a friend sent me screenshots from Meadowbrook's private Facebook group. She'd posted, "Local landowner blocking safety improvements. Refuses to cooperate with flood control that could save lives. Some people care more about old junk than their neighbors." Another post hinted I was struggling emotionally since my wife's passing. That's when I stopped feeling angry and started getting even. The comments poured in like floodwater. "He's unstable. Why hasn't the county stepped in? One guy's ruining our property values." Within hours, the thread jumped from their private group to the next town's page. Someone even made a post titled, "Is Garrett Sullivan the problem with Meadowbrook?" I've never had a social media account in my life. Don't post, don't scroll, don't care. But seeing strangers, people who'd never shaken my hand, calling me crazy and selfish, that hit harder than I expected. That evening, Lyle called. "Garrett, you've seen what they're saying about you?" "Yeah. You gonna respond?" I was sitting on the porch, watching the sunset bleed across the creek. The air smelled like rain, wet soil, ozone, and wood smoke. "No." "What?" "Why not?" "Because replying means I'm playing her game. And I don't play on Facebook, Lyle." He sighed. "Then what do you play?" "Chess," I said. "And I'm about to start my opening move." After we hung up, I pulled out my old Rolodex. Yeah, a real one. Plastic cards, metal knob, the whole thing. I'm 54, not ancient, but I like paper that doesn't need Wi-Fi. I started flipping through names. Engineers I'd built bridges with, surveyors who still owed me a favor, clerks who remembered when paperwork meant integrity, people who knew the system, not the shiny new one, but the one built before Darlene's kind came around. Next morning, my phone buzzed. Rosalie Chen, County Planning Office. 15 years on the job, knows every permit, every zoning loophole, every shortcut developers try to sneak through. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Garrett, I shouldn't be telling you this." "Then don't," I said. "I don't want you getting in trouble." Too late. Darlene's been pulling strings, fast-tracking permits for some big expansion, community center, tennis courts, the works. How fast? 3-week approvals on 90-day reviews. That's not possible. Oh, it's possible when Commissioner Todd Gisham is dating the HOA president. They co-own a condo in Naples, Florida. Public record. I stopped writing mid-note. You're saying a county commissioner is rubber-stamping his girlfriend's HOA projects? I'm saying the paperwork tells its own story. What you do with it is your call. Just be careful, Garrett. I thanked her, hung up, and felt something I hadn't in days. A smile. Because people who think they're untouchable always leave fingerprints. For the next 2 days, I lived at the county clerk's office. Pulled property records, survey plats, easement maps, boxes that smelled like dust and old ink. I've spent 30 years reading engineering diagrams. Those squiggly lines talk to me. And after hours of digging, I found something. Something big. I didn't tell Mitch. Didn't tell Lyle. Not yet. You don't show your hand till the pot's worth taking. Friday afternoon, Mitch called. They're pushing for a hearing next month. Trying to get the case thrown out and make you pay their legal fees. Let them push. He paused. Garrett, you sound way too calm for a man staring down a $50,000 judgment. Trust me, I said, staring out across the tree line toward Meadowbrook's rooftops. I've got insurance. He asked what I meant. I just said, keep filing motions. Keep them busy, because what I'd uncovered wasn't just a crack, it was a fault line. And the word that was going to bury Darlene Pritchett was easement. The following week, I lived like a detective in a low-budget noir film. No whiskey, just coffee strong enough to strip paint and stacks of binders that looked older than me. By day 3, Martha, the head clerk, didn't even ask what I was looking for anymore. "You chasing sunlight or trouble, Garrett?" she said. "Little of both," I answered. She laughed, the kind of laugh that said she'd seen this kind of feud before. I cataloged everything tied to Meadowbrook Estates. Permits, sewage reports, zoning variances, environmental assessments. Built a spreadsheet so detailed it would have scared an auditor. Then I hit Gold Meadowbrook's private sewage. Plant, the one serving all 85 homes, had conditional approval from the DEP. Conditional means temporary. Final sign-off was due in 18 months. I checked the clock. They'd missed it by 14 months. 2 extension requests had gone through, both mysteriously approved. Both carried glowing letters of recommendation, signed by none other than Commissioner Todd Gisham. I leaned back in my chair and grinned. Gotcha. That night I called Brianna Holt, one of my old interns, now a top environmental engineer in Philly. She answered over the sound of a baseball crowd. "Garrett! This better be good. I'm watching the Phillies lose." "Hypothetically," I said, "what happens if a community operates a sewage plant on an expired conditional permit?" She whistled. "That's a violation. Once someone reports it, DP has to inspect within 60 days. If it fails, they're shut down. Residents would have to haul waste out privately, $400 a month per house. Could take how long to fix? 6 months, easy. Send me the complaint form." She hesitated. "Garrett, you file that, you're going nuclear. Then maybe it's time." The next morning, I didn't need to think about it because Darlene made the choice for me. 3 certified letters arrived. Unlicensed vehicle, Dad's old '79 F-150 parked behind the barn. Unsecured burn pile, ashes from clearing brush. Illegal signage, my no trespassing sign was 2 inches too tall. Each came with $150 a day fines if not fixed in 10 days. I called the code officer, a nervous kid named Tyler. "Son, why am I suddenly getting cited for things that have been the same for decades?" He hesitated. "Mr. Sullivan, I was told to check your property daily." "I'm just following orders." "Who gave them?" He went quiet. Didn't have to answer. "I already knew. I sent photos of the citations to Lyle," he called back, fuming. "This is harassment. Nobody's gotten cited in half a year." "I know," I said. "So what are you gonna do?" "What I do best. Paperwork." That afternoon, I filled out the DP complaint form, attached copies of every expired document and Commissioner Geesham's cozy recommendation letters, and dropped it in the mail. Then I called Mitch. File a counter-complaint, harassment, selective enforcement, abuse of authority, all of it. Before hanging up, I asked for one more favor. Pull the original plat map for Old Mill Road, 1952 edition. He asked why. "I've got a hunch," I said. And if I'm right, this whole board's standing on my dirt. That evening, I stood on my porch listening to the sound of Meadowbrook's landscapers in the distance, the constant whine of leaf blowers. I smiled, because in about 60 days, state inspectors would be knocking on Darlene's perfect white door, and she'd never know whose signature started the avalanche. The citations kept rolling in, every 3 days like clockwork. My mailbox too close to the road. Driveway dust levels excessive. Firewood stack visible from public view. Each came with the same $150 a day fine. I fixed a few. Then I stopped and called Mitch. "This isn't enforcement," he said. "It's harassment. Keep every notice. We'll bury them in court." But court moved slow, and Darlene was bleeding me by inches, hoping I'd break before the system caught up. Then, one Sunday afternoon, there was a knock on my door. A man in his early 50s, tired eyes, HOA polo. "Mr. Sullivan?" "I'm Ken Ashford. I'm the HOA treasurer. We need to talk about Darlene Pritchett." I poured him coffee. He sat at my kitchen table, gripping the mug like it was the only steady thing in his life. "I've been keeping records," he said quietly. "Financial ones. And I think she's been stealing from all of us." Kent reached into his worn leather briefcase and spread a stack of papers across my table. Statements, invoices, meeting minutes, dates that didn't line up. He tapped one sheet with his pen. Darlene's been paying herself consulting fees. $4,000 a month. No board approval, no mention in the bylaws. He slid another document toward me. And this one? Dated the morning after your bridge came down, $28,000. HOA funds. Labeled Emergency Infrastructure Repair. I stared at the page. You're saying she used residents' money to destroy my bridge? Kent nodded grimly, and then forged the meeting minutes to make it look like the board approved it. The numbers blurred for a second as the anger settled in. Kent, why are you showing me this? He met my eyes. Because what she did to you was wrong. And because she fined my wife $500 for planting pink roses instead of red. I'm done watching her run this neighborhood like a dictatorship. You realize what'll happen if she finds out you leaked this? I asked. He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. She already makes my life miserable. At least now I'm fighting back. I made copies of every page and shook his hand. You're a good man. I'm just an accountant who hates fraud, he said and walked out. When the door closed, I sat in silence, spreading the papers out in front of me. Every line told a story. Expired septic permits, fake signatures from Commissioner Gisham, falsified minutes, money flowing where it shouldn't. This wasn't about my bridge anymore. Darlene and her boyfriend had built themselves a tiny empire of corruption, and no one had ever bothered to look. That's when I called Andrea Walsh, a local reporter known for digging up county scandals. Andrea, it's Garrett Sullivan, I said. I've got something big. I've heard about the bridge, she replied. You're really taking the HOA to court? This isn't just about a bridge. Try bribery, fraud, falsified documents, county officials in on it. Silence. Then she said, if you're serious, I'll need proof. I've got 400 pages of it, I said. When and where? We met the next day at a roadside diner halfway to Pittsburgh. She came with a recorder and a legal pad. I came with a binder that could crush a man's foot. For 2 hours, I laid it all out. The demolition, the harassment, the developer kickbacks, Kent's financial records, everything. She asked smart, careful questions, scribbled notes, then finally leaned back. This is a real story, she said quietly. But I'll need to verify before I print a word. Take your time, I told her. Just watch your back. Darlene's got friends in high places. Andrea smiled. Mr. Sullivan, I've been doing this 15 years. I know how to handle bullies. 5 days later, the article hit the internet. Headline, County Commissioner linked to developer in land scheme. Ethics questions mount. It laid out Gisham's relationship with Darlene, the shady permits, the HOA's campaign donations, all of it. She didn't mention the embezzlement yet, saving that for when she had airtight proof. But the damage was done. Pittsburgh media picked it up by noon, and by evening there were news vans parked outside the courthouse. Gisham went on camera, denying everything. But the ethics board announced an official investigation within 2 days. My phone blew up. Reporters, township officials suddenly pretending to care, even Meadowbrook residents calling to apologize. I didn't answer a single one. I just sat on my porch, watching the sun sink over the creek, and smiled. Because for the first time since that bulldozer roared to life, Darlene wasn't in control anymore. I was, and the best part? She had no idea how much more I was holding. The road, the expired easement, the environmental complaint, all loaded and waiting. That night, Lyle texted me, "You magnificent bastard." She's losing it. Good, I wrote back. 3 days later, Andrea called again. Garrett, it's confirmed. Kent's documents check out. The embezzlement piece drops tomorrow. But I want you to know it's going to get messy. Let it, I said. Then I called Mitch. It's time. By the time the second article went live, HOA president accused of embezzling community funds. Mitch had already filed 2 documents with the county clerk. The first, formal notice withdrawing public access to Old Mill Road, effective in 30 days. The second, legal notice that Meadowbrook's utility easement had expired due to clerical error, and I wasn't renewing it. Both perfectly lawful. Both public record. Both nuclear. My phone rang within an hour. The county engineer sounded like he'd swallowed his coffee wrong. Mr. Sullivan, are you aware this road serves as the emergency access route for Meadowbrook Estates? I am. If you close it, response times triple. Fire trucks, ambulances, that's unfortunate, I said. But it's private land, and I'm simply reclaiming my rights. By lunchtime, half the county had called. Fire chief, supervisors, planning board. They all begged, threatened, pleaded. My answer never changed. If Meadowbrook wants to keep using my land, they can negotiate an easement at market value. That afternoon, the story leaked. Andrea called again, half laughing. Garrett, tell me it's true. You own the only other way into the subdivision? Every inch of it. She actually laughed. They demolished your bridge and now they're trapped behind a gate. That's poetic justice. Wait till they realize the sewage lines run through my property too, I said. You're not really planning to cut it off, are you? She asked. I haven't decided. But a new bridge seems like a fair trade. By Thursday night, Meadowbrook called an emergency HOA meeting. Kent texted me updates as it unfolded. Residents yelling, some demanding Darlene resign, others talking about suing her, one woman crying because her elderly mother might lose ambulance access. By Friday morning, I had the full audio recording. Darlene's voice shook as she tried to calm them. This is just a misunderstanding. Our lawyers are handling it. A man's voice cut through. You said everything was fine. Now we find out you stole our money and got our utilities threatened. Then an older woman, frightened. My husband's on oxygen. What happens if an ambulance can't get through because you made enemies? Silence. Darlene had no answer. That evening, I sat on my porch again, the sky turning gold and purple, the creek whispering through the rocks. And for the first time in months, I felt it. Control. Not vengeance yet, just the calm certainty that the power had shifted, because roads, water, electricity, they're not luxuries. They're lifelines, and I own them all. Lyle texted again. Their Facebook group's melting down. This is better than TV, I typed back. Game's not over yet. Saturday morning, my kitchen turned into a war room. By 9 a.m., 5 people sat around my table. Mitch, legal pads stacked like ammo. Lyle, grinning like a man at a poker table. Rosalie from county planning with a flash drive she definitely shouldn't have. Retired Judge Meeks, calm and sharp. And Brianna, my former intern, now an environmental engineer, holding a binder thicker than a Bible. All right, Mitch said, tapping his pen. You've got leverage. The question is, what's the end game? I'd been thinking about that all week. I want my bridge rebuilt. Exactly how it was. I want a printed apology from the HOA in the local paper. I want fair compensation for the easement going forward. And I want Darlene out. The judge looked up over his glasses. Reasonable, but tread lightly. Push too hard, you look vindictive. Courts remember that. Lyle snorted. Vindictive? She filmed the demolition like it was a parade. The judge smiled faintly. Legally, she deserves nothing. Strategically, give her just enough rope to hang herself. How? I asked. Brianna spoke first. The environmental complaint's already filed. When the state inspects Meadowbrook's sewage plant and fails it, they'll have to rebuild. That's not revenge. That's regulation. Rosalie nodded. Same with the ethics probe on Geesham. You're just the whistleblower. Let the system do the punishing. Lyle grinned. So the government's the bad guy, and Garrett walks away looking noble. I like it. Mitch opened a thick folder. Here's our next move. Public mediation hearing. Township meeting. Cameras, residents, reporters. Darlene won't be able to hide behind her lawyers. You'll state your terms on record. If she agrees, perfect. If she refuses, you look fair and she looks like the problem. I smiled for the first time all day. Then let's give them a show. Sunlight exposes everything, as they say. Judge Meeks tapped the draft with a pen. Every clause needs teeth. No wiggle room she can twist later. Brianna suggested solid numbers for the renewal. $500 a month for 20 years, she said. That's standard commercial access value out here. I double-checked. 3 nearby properties matched. For the bridge, Judge Meeks added, you'll get 3 bids from licensed contractors. The HOA pays the median. No substitutes, no haggling. Mitch nodded and wrote it down. And the apology? He asked. I paused. It has to be specific. My name, my grandfather's name, and an acknowledgement that tearing down the bridge was unauthorized and wrong. It runs in the Township Gazette for 2 weeks and gets posted at Meadowbrook's main gate. Rosalie smirked. She'll hate that. She should have thought about that before she sent the bulldozer, I replied. Then came the hard talk, risk assessment. What if she refuses? I asked. You can revoke the easement, Mitch said. But you'll be the guy who blocks Grandma's ambulance. Judge Meeks offered a compromise. Close it to normal traffic, but emergency vehicles still get access. Let the residents take Highway 29. That'll apply pressure without putting lives in danger, Brianna said. And for utilities, give them 30 days' notice. Then if they won't negotiate, cut the line. By noon, we'd built a fortress of a plan. Lyle lingered last, clapping my shoulder. Garrett, I've known you 30 years. Never seen you this sharp. A little intimidating, honestly. I grinned. Not scary. Just someone who reads contracts. After everyone left, I stood by the window, staring toward Meadowbrook. Couldn't see much through the trees, but I knew it was there. The tidy streets, the matching mailboxes, the woman who thought she was untouchable. That night, a crow perched on my railing, cocking its head like it wanted to know what came next. I smiled. What came next was simple. One last chance for Darlene to do what's right. When she didn't, and she wouldn't, I'd show her what happens when you cross someone who actually understands infrastructure. I should have known she'd strike back. Monday night, 2:30 a.m., chainsaws. Loud, close. I threw on boots and ran outside. 2 men were dropping oaks across Old Mill Road, fresh sawdust swirling under the floodlight. This is private property, I shouted, filming as I ran. They froze, bolted to a white rental truck, and sped off. I caught faces, plates, everything. Deputy Collins showed up 40 minutes later, same guy from the bridge case. This is criminal mischief, maybe conspiracy, he muttered. Then he spotted a glove left behind and bagged it. Might get prints. Watch your back, Garrett. The next morning he called, truck rented on Marcus Pritchett's card. Darlene's son, can we charge him? I asked. Not yet, but as leverage? Collins grinned. That's gold, I called Mitch. He chuckled darkly. Don't use it now. Wait for mediation. Let her watch the room realize her son's behind it. You'll win the war without raising your voice. The week spiraled. Anonymous calls, my truck egged. A dead raccoon left on my porch. Petty intimidation. Lyle came over, took one look, and said, She's unraveling. Bullies lash out when they lose control. You're winning. Stay steady. Friday, I attended the township meeting. Residents accused me of holding them hostage. I stood. I'm not blocking anyone. I'm protecting what's mine. Meadowbrook can negotiate like adults. When I left, Darlene sat in her Tesla, eyes wide, not furious, but frightened. 3 days later, Kent showed up pale and shaken. She fired me as HOA treasurer, he said. But before she locked me out, I downloaded everything. He showed me the numbers, fake consulting fees, overpaid relatives, hundreds of thousands siphoned from HOA funds. Why not go to the police? I asked. I did. They said it's civil. We called Mitch. That's breach of fiduciary duty, he said. If Kent speaks up, she's done. Andrea Walsh confirmed it, publishing a detailed expose 3 days before mediation. By the time it hit the front page, Darlene Pritchett wasn't a president anymore. She was a headline. The headline dropped like a hammer. Meadowbrook HOA president accused of self-dealing. Andrea's article was airtight. Vendor records, resident interviews, even a landscaper admitting to referral kickbacks. By midday, Meadowbrook's Facebook group was chaos. Angry homeowners demanded Darlene's resignation, threatened lawsuits, and launched recall petitions. The DA's office, silent for weeks, suddenly announced a review. Darlene, meanwhile, vanished. No statements, no posts, no public defense. Her office line went straight to voicemail. Thursday night, Kent texted, "Emergency HOA meeting. Vote on Darlene's removal." He didn't go, said it wasn't his place, but he sent updates. 70 residents packed the room. Darlene tried spinning her payments as routine consulting and board-approved compensation. Nobody bought it. The board voted 4-1 to remove her immediately, and the members voted to suspend her pending a full audit. Kent's final message. She stormed out. People shouted all the way to her car. It's done. I sat on my porch reading those texts as the sky turned gray with oncoming rain. The air buzzed with that charged metallic scent before a storm. Somewhere down the hill, a dog barked into the dark. Lyle called, laughing. Did you see it?
She's finished!
DA's circling. You won, Garrett. She's got nothing left, but I didn't feel victorious. Winning wasn't about crushing Darlene, it was about restoration. I didn't want her downfall. I wanted my bridge. I called Mitch. Tomorrow's mediation, I said. I'm not there to gloat. I just want closure. He was quiet a moment. You're a better man than she deserves. But don't let compassion cost you justice. I watched the sun fade behind the trees, bruising the clouds purple. Pops wouldn't want revenge, I said. He'd want it made right, Mitch's voice softened. Then let's make it right. Friday, 7 p.m. The township hall overflowed. Fire code said 1 to 50. At least 200 packed inside. The air was thick with nerves and burnt coffee. 3 news crews streamed live. 5,000 watching online. Mitch and I sat at one table. Across from us, Darlene and a young lawyer who looked like he'd borrowed his suit. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No designer bag, no practiced poise. Just tired? Supervisor Chen opened the session. This mediation concerns the dispute between Mr. Garrett Sullivan and Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Mr. Sullivan, you may begin. I stood. No notes. I didn't need them. On the projector, the first photo appeared. My grandfather's bridge, proud and intact. Then the next, the bulldozer tearing through it. Darlene and others in the background, phones up, some smiling. The crowd went dead silent. I walked them through everything. The demolition, the social media smears, the bogus code violations, the 2:30 a.m. chainsaw sabotage. I played the video, 2 men cutting down trees, fleeing when caught. The rental traced to Darlene's son. Gasps rippled through the room. I haven't pressed charges, I said evenly, because this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. I turned off the projector. I also learned something else. Old Mill Road, the access Meadowbrook uses, is on my land. Their utility easement expired over a year ago. They've been using it illegally ever since. Murmurs rose again. I could close that road tomorrow, I continued. Cut utilities in 30 days. But I won't punish families for one person's arrogance. So here's what happens instead. I set down the proposal, $78,000 for damages. HOA funds reconstruction, estimated $120,000. Public apology printed for 2 weeks in the Township Gazette. Renewed easement at $500 monthly for 20 years. Permanent emergency access, no charge. And an end to all harassment, targeting, and retaliation. I looked at Darlene. You thought I wouldn't fight back. You were right, I fought smarter. I didn't yell. I documented. My grandfather built that bridge with his hands. You tore it down laughing. This is how we rebuild, with fairness and truth. The room erupted. Reporters shouted, residents yelled questions. Supervisor Chen banged his gavel for order and called a recess. 15 minutes later, the interim HOA president, a soft-spoken accountant, stood. Mr. Sullivan, the board accepts all terms. We'll prepare documents by Monday, and on behalf of Meadowbrook, I apologize. What happened was wrong. We'll make it right. Chen nodded. Miss Pritchett, anything to add? Darlene rose slowly, face pale. I acted in what I thought was best for the community, she said. Nothing more. Chen's tone hardened. Terms accepted. Mediation concluded. The hall exploded into noise again, reporters surging, residents swarming. Darlene walked toward the exit. People parted like she carried a disease. At the door, she turned to look at me one last time. I didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just met her eyes until she left. Outside, the night was cool and clean. Lyle was waiting, grinning. You did it, Mitch clapped my shoulder. In 3 decades of law, I've never seen anyone win this gracefully. I looked up at the stars. She beat herself, Mitch. I just showed the evidence. The settlement finalized within a week. Funds transferred Friday. The Gazette printed the apology the following Monday. Half a page, formal and cold. Darlene's signature was missing, but nobody needed it to know. Someone taped a copy to the Meadowbrook gate. It stayed 3 days before vanishing. By June, bridge reconstruction began. I hired Vernon, a local stonemason who specialized in historic restorations. We used creek stones like Pops did in 1943 and oak beams milled from my land. The bridge was identical to the original, stronger this time. Finished under budget. In July, we held a community stone setting day. I expected 20 volunteers. 67 showed up, families, retirees, even Meadowbrook residents ready to make amends. We worked all day, shared fried chicken and pie on the lawn, and by sunset, the bridge stood halfway rebuilt. For the first time in months, the air felt light again. Kids showed up that July afternoon with paint-stained fingers and wild imaginations. They decorated small river stones for the bridge path. Flowers, names, little suns, and rainbows. One girl, maybe 7, looked up at me and asked, "Why's the bridge so important?" I told her my grandfather built it so neighbors could reach one another, and that's what bridges are really for. Connection. She nodded solemnly, like it was the most obvious truth in the world, and went back to painting daisies on her rock. The dedication came that September. We mounted a plaque on a limestone pillar, Sullivan Bridge, built 1943 by William Pops Sullivan. Rebuilt 2025 by the community. My daughter flew in from Oregon with my 2 grandkids. Judge Meeks spoke first about legacy, fairness, and learning from mistakes. A few people wiped tears. When it was my turn, I just said, "Pops believed bridges unite people. This one nearly tore us apart. But rebuilding it brought us closer than ever." Then my granddaughter ran across the new boards, laughing, her footsteps echoing over the water. Between her laughter, the creek below, and the scent of fresh oak, I knew the story had come full circle. The bridge's legacy didn't stop there. I took $100,000 from the settlement and started the Pops Sullivan Trade Scholarship, a $5,000 yearly award for students going into engineering, construction, or skilled trades. The first recipient was Kent's daughter, a bright 17-year-old who wants to be a surveyor. At the ceremony, she told me, "My dad says doing the right thing matters more than comfort. Watching him stand up with you showed me that." That one sentence hit harder than any victory. Meadowbrook changed too. The residents voted in a new board that posts budgets online, records every vote, and brings in independent audits. A few residents even thanked me. "You saved us from worse corruption later," one said. I didn't feel like a savior, just a man who refused to let a bully win. The county overhauled its permit system after my case made headlines. Old Mill Road earned a township historical marker. And Darlene? She sold her house at a loss and moved to Arizona a few months later. Haven't thought much about her since. 6 months after the dedication, on a crisp March morning, I sat on my porch watching sunrise turn the creek gold. My phone buzzed. It was Patterson, the new HOA president. "Spring potluck this Saturday. You're invited as guest of honor. No pressure, just wanted you to know you're welcome." I smiled and texted back, "I'll bring potato salad." Later, I walked down to the bridge, tracing my hand over the stone rail. The surface felt smooth and strong, moss already creeping into the seams. A pickup rumbled across. The driver waved. I waved back. That's when I finally understood what Pops meant about building things that last. Not just bridges, but trust, fairness, and the choice to rebuild better after someone tears something down. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an out-of-control HOA, a power-hungry neighbor, or a board that thought the rules didn't apply to them? Drop your story in the comments. Tell us how you stood your ground, or where you're stuck. This community's got your back. And if you like seeing justice served, make sure you hit subscribe and ring that bell. We've got more stories coming about ordinary people fighting back and winning. Next episode, a landlord tries to evict a tenant for unauthorized repairs. Problem is, the tenant's a licensed contractor and the building has 47 code violations. You'll want to see how that plays out. Thanks for watching HOA Story Files, where karma meets the property line. If you enjoyed today's tale, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs a little hope. See you in the next showdown.